1 minute ago, Jennifer Lawrence reveals her final message. The truth is out. The silence inside the federal courtroom was not absence. It was pressure. A silence heavy with what was about to unfold. Cameras didn't flash. Reporters didn't speak. Even the ceiling lights seemed dimmed, unwilling to shine on what would soon be revealed. Jennifer Lawrence stepped forward. Not the Jennifer the world once knew, charming, charismatic, the face of silver screen resilience. This woman carried no smile. Her suit was matte, her eyes hollow but focused. In her hands a silver box, and inside it something that had already cracked open the shadows surrounding one of the most powerful men in the entertainment world. She stood alone. No press agent, no entourage, just memory. I will not disappear. I will not let you buy me off, and I will not become the next Cassie. The courtroom contracted. Every ear leaned in. Every breath held. The man she faced, Sean Diddy Combs, sat at the defense table. Once untouchable, now unsteady. A quiet storm roiled behind his still expression. His hands, white-knuckled, gripped the edge of the table. Not from rage, from anticipation. Because he knew what was coming. Jennifer began to speak, not loud, not performative. She didn't yell. She delivered. The words fell like indictments, slow and exacting. I was once part of the illusion. The freak-off parties. The gold-lit rooms where everyone pretended charity, and no one dared say the word control. Her fingers opened the box slowly. Inside a silver ring, delicate but weighted. A glint of deep red in its stone. She lifted it as if lifting a verdict. This ring was given to insiders. Not as a gift, but as a leash. Embedded inside it is surveillance tech. A slot no bigger than a sliver. Daniel Rhee found it, and he died for it. Murmurs broke the silence. The judge raised a hand. The room stilled again. Daniel Rhee. A name once relegated to footnotes. A freelance reporter, passionate, persistent, annoying to those in power, until he vanished after a car accident on a quiet road. Jennifer's voice cracked only once. Daniel was my friend, the only one who saw through the gloss, the only one who warned me. When he gave me this ring, he also gave me a note. It read, "You were at that party. You need to know the truth." 2 days later, he was dead. The defense flinched. Jennifer turned to the court's projector. A technician approached, connecting the ring to a forensic port. For several seconds, there was nothing but the hum of the room. Then video. Grainy golden, but unmistakable. A room awash in low light, velvet couches, champagne. Laughter that didn't sound right. Men in suits, women in fear. And at the center, Sean Combs speaking into the air. We can't let anyone stand in our way. Handle them at all costs. There was no narration, no music. Just the tape. A suitcase of cash. A drug handoff. A scream muffled by laughter. And then a flash of Jennifer's face in a corner. Confused. Cornered. Searching. The room erupted, but not with noise. With realization. Jennifer turned again. I thought it was a fundraiser. I thought I was there to support children. But no child was ever helped. Only predators were protected. She walked to the judge's bench. I did not come here to destroy a man. I came here because Daniel couldn't finish this story. Because if I stayed silent, my son might grow up in a world where men like this never fall. And I will not let that happen. A pause. The ring recorded more than just video. It stored receipts. Names, locations, devices. Gifts disguised as threats. She placed a file beside the ring. Inside images of necklaces, trophies, signed invitations. Diddy gave me a necklace once, she said. Inside the box was a letter. It said, Rising Star Award. Stay quiet and shine. I thought it was recognition. It was a muzzle. Diddy's attorney, Robert Clean, rose, his voice sharp. Your Honor, this is a show. There's no forensic confirmation that this ring belongs to Mr. Ree. These videos could have been edited. Jennifer turned calmly. I invite every technician in this building to analyze it. The data isn't doctored. The encryption is military grade. This isn't a show. This is memory. The judge nodded. A technical expert was brought in. After 30 minutes confirmation, no tampering, no corruption. The ring had been built as a surveillance artifact. A tool, but now turned weapon. Jennifer's voice softened. After Daniel died, I tried to forget. I raised my son quietly. I stayed off red carpets. But one day I received a photo. She pulled it from her jacket. Her son. In a park. A message beneath, "You know what to do?" I knew then, she said. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about silencing legacy. About erasing those who could speak. About breaking mothers. Tears welled. She didn't wipe them. Once I thought silence was strength. But silence let this happen. So I speak. For Cassie. For Kim. For Daniel. And for my son. Diddy didn't speak. His face twitched slightly. His lawyer whispered again, panic rising. Then came the next blow. Jennifer opened the final compartment of the box. A map. Hand-drawn. Black ink. Red and blue markers. Symbols along tunnels, rooms, nodes. Daniel drew this, she said. He found what no one was supposed to find. A hidden tunnel network beneath Los Angeles, connecting mansions, server rooms, escape routes. She paused. I didn't want to believe it either, until I saw the building. The purple tunnel, the keypad hidden behind a false wall. This isn't fiction. It's architecture. Gasps, audible this time. Judge Margaret Sullivan leaned forward. You're suggesting this defendant operates a covert criminal syndicate beneath Beverly Hills. Yes, Jennifer answered, and I have proof. Start with the address circled in red. The judge called recess. The courtroom didn't erupt. It exhaled. Outside, media vans began to arrive. Inside, the ring was handed to the FBI. The map was scanned, and for the first time in years, Diddy did not move. His hands, once clenched in power, were now limp. The empire he built on silence was beginning to speak. The ring had spoken. By the time court resumed the next morning, federal agents had already breached the first site circled in red on Daniel Ree's hand-drawn map, Homey Hills, a sleek modernist mansion with no listed owner. From the outside, nothing appeared illegal, just another fortress among LA's elite enclaves. But behind a false wall in the basement, investigators discovered a biometric panel, and beneath it, a tunnel. Concrete. Reinforced. Wired for surveillance. At its end, a soundproof server room containing terabytes of encrypted data. And suddenly, the courtroom wasn't just about a ring. It was about infrastructure. Jennifer Lawrence returned to the witness stand with less hesitation in her steps. Her hands still trembled. Grief doesn't vanish in a day, but her voice no longer quivered. I knew, she said, when I touched that wall, when I saw the wires buried in stone. This wasn't just exploitation. This was engineered control. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere shifted. The crowd was no longer skeptical. They were alert. Diddy's defense team, once smug, now avoided her eyes. And Judge Sullivan? She didn't interrupt anymore. Jennifer continued. The tunnel wasn't for escaping the press. It was for trafficking information, for moving money, for disappearing people. What Daniel uncovered, it's not just evidence of abuse. It's a network. She paused, reaching for the next document. A digital extract of server logs. Transactions routed through offshore proxies. Footage of those parties stored by date by attendee. Lists of names, contracts, even shipment records. Some files are marked with initials. Some with photographs, a beat of silence. Some with blackmail notes. The prosecution rose. We request these findings be entered into the record. The FBI confirms this data was extracted from the exact location identified on the witness's map. Diddy shifted for the first time, not toward his lawyer, but away from the stand, away from Jennifer. He couldn't look at her now. Jennifer spoke again, slower, as if each sentence carried weight enough to stand alone. There were rooms beneath that house, rooms without windows, rooms with locks on the outside. One of them had walls lined with velvet and a hidden camera in the light fixture. This wasn't just about parties. It was a system. Judge Sullivan narrowed her gaze. Ms. Lawrence, are you stating under oath that the defendant orchestrated a physical infrastructure for surveillance manipulation and control? Jennifer nodded. I'm stating that what I saw was not excess. It was entrapment, and I believe others, some still missing, may have never made it out. The room tensed. Every listener, from stenographer to security guard, understood what had just been implied. Kidnapping, detention, perhaps worse. But Jennifer didn't let the weight hang too long. She turned to the jury. This isn't about fame or revenge. It's about what we let happen when someone gets too powerful to question. It's about what we lose when no one listens. And then she said the name that cracked the air again. Cassie. Gasps. Audible again. She tried to warn us, Jennifer said. I saw her that night, in the corner. Clutching a glass she didn't drink, eyes darting, searching for exits. I was told it was a charity event, but Cassie knew better. She didn't smile. She survived. A new video was presented, this one recently uncovered from the server, dated 6 months before Jennifer received the ring. It showed Cassie at one of the same parties, her face tight, her dress elegant, but her body language screamed retreat. The camera, positioned discreetly in a chandelier, captured her, shaking her head at a man who tried to hand her a drink. Jennifer turned away when the footage showed Cassie being guided, no pulled, toward a side hallway. The image froze. That was the last time I saw her in public. A juror wiped a tear. And then Jennifer pulled a final item from her bag. A second note. Folded. Old. This was left inside the silver box, she said. I didn't open it until last month. I was afraid of what it would confirm. She unfolded it slowly. It was Daniel's handwriting. If you read this, they've gotten to me. You were at that party. You saw more than you remember. They will come for you. But if you speak, they can't own you. Jennifer closed her eyes. I stayed silent for a long time, not out of shame, out of fear. And for a while it worked. I stopped acting. I stayed off press lines. I received anonymous calls. Once a letter left at my son's school. She looked at the judge. It said, "We're watching. Choose wisely." A chill moved through the room. Judge Sullivan, Jennifer said, voice lower now, but iron-edged. I don't need protection. I need action. And this time the judge didn't hesitate. Proceed with forensic sweep of all map locations, she ordered the prosecution. Issue emergency warrants for any financial records tied to the shell companies listed in Exhibit 4A. The courtroom stirred again, but it was not chaos. It was movement. A shift in gravity. Diddy's lawyer stood to object, but the judge cut him off. I've seen enough to know we cannot afford inaction. Outside, the story had already begun to spread. The video clip of Jennifer holding the ring played on every screen from CNN to TikTok. The phrase, "this ring doesn't lie," trended across platforms. Inside, Jennifer remained still. Not triumphant, but unmoved. Because the war was no longer for herself. It was for those who hadn't been able to speak. For those who'd been gifted necklaces or trophies or rings only to vanish under the weight of silence. And, as the next address was pulled up on the screen, Jennifer said only one more sentence before the session closed. This isn't over, and I'm not leaving. The judge nodded, and neither did anyone else. The court had adjourned, but no one left. Not the agents who now formed quiet clusters near the exit's phones to their ears, coordinating the next phase of the sweep. Not the jury whose eyes lingered on the exhibit screen, still showing the second location, a hillside estate, in Bear, marked with a single red triangle. And certainly not Jennifer Lawrence, who remained seated, her silver box closed, but clutched tight, her expression unchanged. Because this wasn't over. And she wasn't leaving. By dawn the next day, the red triangle estate was breached. FBI Task Force 072, equipped with ground-penetrating radar and digital decryption kits, found a second tunnel system, this one wider, better lit. But it wasn't the tunnel that made headlines. It was what sat beneath it. 12 suitcases, lined in black velvet, each containing bundles of unmarked cash, preloaded surveillance devices, and documents sealed in heavy-duty plastic. And, beneath a loose floor panel, a locked compartment with 2 names engraved on laminated folders. Cassie Ventura, Kim Porter. By noon, the courtroom was back in session. This time the gallery was packed, not just with reporters, but with women. Silent. Watching. Jennifer walked in through the side entrance. She carried no documents, no notes, only the ring now looped around a chain on her neck, and a photo. The one that had been inside the second envelope, her son, sleeping, peaceful. And beneath it, written in scrawled ink, "He'll never smile again if you don't speak." She placed it on the table beside her. The prosecution opened with urgency. Your Honor, agents uncovered highly classified communications beneath the Bear estate encrypted email, chains invoices to entities registered in the Cayman Islands, and embedded video files linked to security footage of events held between 2019 and 2023. The files include facial recognition matches to known victims and 3 elected officials. A gasp rippled through the room. Someone in the gallery whispered, "3 Jennifer stood." Her voice had no tremor. "One of those officials," she said, once gave me an award. He handed me a plaque and told me I was a symbol of survival. Now I know he knew exactly what I survived. The gallery froze. She turned to the judge. This wasn't just a culture of silence. It was an operation. Orchestrated, sanitized, funded. Her eyes locked with Diddy's. He didn't flinch. But his lawyer leaned in and began writing furiously. Then came the next blow. Jennifer tapped the microphone lightly. "There's one more file." The courtroom dimmed slightly as the screen turned on. The FBI technician nodded. This was recovered from a drive found inside the server wall deep storage. Previously unregistered. The file name was simply Red Room as 0324 Final. The footage began. A dim hallway, gold walls, a woman face partially obscured, escorted down a corridor by 2 men. One man looks at the camera and smirks. In the background voices, a name is called, Jenny. The figure turns. It's Jennifer. The courtroom collectively stiffens. The clip continues. She's offered a drink. She hesitates. She takes a step back. Then Daniel Rhee's voice, faint but clear, cuts through leave. Now, the footage ends. Silence. Jennifer turns back toward the jury. "I didn't remember that night. Not all of it. I thought I left before it began. But seeing that, I realized I was spared. Someone pulled me out. Daniel." She pauses, but Cassie didn't leave. The prosecution rises again. "Your Honor, based on this and additional testimony from corroborating witnesses, we are now pursuing charges beyond conspiracy, including kidnapping, obstruction of justice, unlawful surveillance, and interstate trafficking." Diddy's attorney finally stands. "Objection, Your Honor. These charges are being built off hearsay and media sensationalism. There is no forensic proof that my client orchestrated this so-called network." Jennifer doesn't wait for the judge. She holds up the ring again. This ring was built with a transmission chip. Every video, every file it uploaded in real time. The FBI confirmed yesterday that backups exist on an encrypted offshore server, Daniel linked via a tracker hidden in this stone. She looks directly at the defense table. Your client didn't plan for the ring to fall into a reporter's hands, but he knew what it could do. He called it the Eye of God. The court gasped again, not because of volume, but because of truth. Judge Sullivan raised her gavel slowly, not to silence the room, but to anchor it. This court is entering a new phase of this hearing. All charges listed are now provisionally upheld pending full review of the encrypted server files. Jennifer didn't smile. She just lowered the ring. But then she did something no one expected. She walked away from the witness stand and toward the audience. She stood before the women in the gallery, before the mothers, the daughters, the survivors, and she spoke not into the mic but to them. We're taught to be grateful for success, to keep our heads down, to accept what's offered and never ask what it cost. But silence is not gratitude, and fear is not loyalty. She turned slightly toward the jury. Every time one of us says nothing, the system grows stronger. But when one of us says enough, it cracks. And today, it's cracking. A beat. They took Daniel. They tried to take me. But they will not take my son's future. Or yours. She stepped back. The judge ordered a recess. And this time the gallery did rise. Some applauded. Some stood in stunned silence. But all watched her exit not as a star, as a reckoning. Outside, the FBI confirmed a third location on the map, Pacific Palisades. A storage warehouse marked in blue. And what they would find inside would finally force the system not just to listen, but to act. The warehouse in Pacific Palisades wasn't much to look at. Just a corrugated steel box with rust stains and a single security camera half buried under layers of ivy. But inside, beneath loose floorboards and under false inventory sheets, agents discovered what Jennifer had warned the court about. Not just receipts, records, contracts with offshore partners, shipments labeled in code, transaction logs showing payments routed from entertainment foundations to shell accounts. But, most chillingly, physical dossiers. 53 of them. Each labeled with a name, a photo, and a threat. Jennifer Lawrence's file was among them. So was Cassie Ventura's. So was Kim Porter's. And in the third drawer at the bottom, a folder with only one image inside. A photo of Jennifer's son at the park. With the words, "Last warning." Inside the courtroom, as news broke, a tremor rippled through the audience. Judge Sullivan summoned both parties back to session within the hour. For the first time since the trial began, Diddy refused to make eye contact with anyone. Not his lawyer, not the jury, not the judge. He sat hunched, hands, clasped lips moving in soundless repetition. Jennifer returned to the stand not because she had to, but because she chose to. This, she said, holding up the photo, was the moment I stopped being afraid. She placed the image on the evidence table directly in front of Diddy's seat. I always believed my silence was protecting him. That if I just stayed quiet, maybe the threat would fade. But silence didn't shield him. It marked him. She turned to the courtroom. This file proves I was never overreacting. That the messages weren't paranoia. That the fear I lived with watching every car parked near my son's school, every man who lingered too long at the grocery store, was not hysteria. It was design. The prosecution followed with the warehouse inventory, labeling it as Exhibit 7A. Every folder was logged. Every item cataloged. Over 2,000 documents confirmed the existence of a covert coercion network that spanned industries. Jennifer sat her hands folded, but her gaze never dropped. Then the twist. The prosecution requested permission to play one last recording, found inside the Pacific warehouse, a backup audio file stored on a nearly obsolete format microcassette. The judge nodded. The tape began. It was grainy, but the voice was unmistakable. Daniel Rhee. This message is for Jennifer. If you're hearing this, it means the ring made it. That I didn't. I'm sorry. His breath hitched. You were never supposed to carry this weight. But you were the only one with enough light to crack their shadow. They'll call you names. Crazy. Traitor. But don't stop. Don't let them rewrite what we both saw. A pause. There's a room in the third tunnel, far end, blue wiring. If they haven't torn it down, there's a server. It's the last one. And it holds everything. Silence. Then softly, they'll come for you. But you're not alone. The courtroom was dead quiet. The sound of the tape clicking off felt like thunder. Jennifer whispered more to herself than to anyone else. He knew he wouldn't make it out. And then she stood. Not to speak, not to perform, but to deliver one last piece of the truth. She reached into her coat and removed a second object, the folded blueprint Daniel had hidden behind the ring. It was the final map, marked not just with tunnels and safe houses, but with something else. Escape routes. Routes out of the city. Away from the system. Arrows pointing to locations across California. All of them labeled in Daniel's handwriting, for the ones who run. She laid the blueprint on the table. I believe there are others, she said. Survivors who escaped. Who've been hiding? If we find them, this case isn't just a conviction, it's a rescue. The judge stared at the map, then at Jennifer, and then, for the first time in the entire trial, Judge Sullivan's voice cracked. This is no longer a trial, she said. It's a dismantling. The courtroom exhaled. The walls, it seemed, had heard enough. The jury was dismissed for the day. Not to rest, but to process. Outside media erupted. Jennifer Lawrence uncovers underground network of coercion and surveillance. Files found in warehouse include threats to public officials and children. For the ones who run becomes global hashtag. But inside Jennifer's heart, there was no victory. Only resolve. Because one location remained unsearched. One tunnel mapped in red and black had yet to be verified. It led to a name Daniel never wrote out fully. Just an initial V. And under it, a final phrase. He built the system. But someone else funded it. Jennifer folded the blueprint again, slower this time. Because the story, though staggering, was not yet complete. The final tunnel remained. It was the one Daniel had marked with a single letter V followed by no name, no title. Just a caution, he built the system. But someone else funded it. Until now, every location revealed in court had connected to Diddy. Properties in his name or quietly managed by associates hidden behind trust accounts and shell firms. But this last site, it traced back to a venture capital firm tied not to the entertainment industry, but to a political donor network stretching across Washington and Brussels. Inside the courtroom, the revelation sparked what Judge Sullivan called a necessary widening of scope. The trial, now fully federalized, had expanded beyond the crimes of one man. It had become a case study in institutional rot, how fame shields abuse, and how power hides its receipts behind charm and ceremony. Jennifer Lawrence stood again. No longer with trembling hands, no longer as a reluctant witness. She had become something else entirely. A signal fire. She addressed the court in a voice that no longer asked for permission to speak. Daniel knew that this wasn't about Diddy alone. He always said the real danger wasn't the man in the center. It was the ones who stood just far enough in the shadows to be untouchable. That's what this last location is about. She gestured to the updated blueprint projected on the screen. The tunnel marked V stretched beneath a corporate plaza on the outskirts of Beverly Hills. Above it, a digital art foundation known for its celebrity patrons. But inside, according to Daniel's map servers, weapons and something else labeled only as backroom. The FBI raided the location at 3:42 a.m. By 6:00 a.m., they had confirmed what Jennifer feared: the plaza was a facade. Beneath it was a private vault requiring dual biometric access. Inside, agents recovered 2 servers, 15 hard drives, several forged diplomatic passports, and 1 steel box identical to Jennifer's. Except this one wasn't empty. Inside, 4 additional rings. each embedded with data ports, each tagged with names. 3 were known victims, but the 4th belonged to a sitting senator. Jennifer arrived in court later that morning with only one sentence written in her notes. She didn't read from a statement. She didn't show footage. She simply walked to the witness stand, lifted her chin, and said, "You see now, it was never just about me. A beat. It was about all the systems we refuse to see." The prosecution presented the latest findings with visible caution. They were now navigating not only legal terrain, but geopolitical fault lines. Your Honor, the digital files from the V location indicate offshore transfers connected to campaign financing, private security contracts, and operations flagged by international watchdogs for human rights violations. We also recovered images linking known trafficking victims to events sponsored by the foundation above the vault. Judge Sullivan's face remained unreadable, but her voice when she spoke was lined with steel. This court now recognizes a transnational criminal network operating under the cover of art charity and celebrity. We will proceed with all due gravity. Jennifer's voice broke the silence next. I believe this is what Daniel died to uncover. Not just a list of crimes, but a blueprint of complicity. She paused, then added, and now that we have it, we can't pretend we don't. That afternoon, the FBI released partial findings from the final server. Among the files, recordings of strategy meetings involving multiple individuals, legal advisors, media consultants, even a tech executive discussing how to neutralize whistleblowers through digital blackmail and asset freezes. One voice, distorted but traceable, repeated a phrase 3 times. They talk, they vanish. Jennifer requested to play a final message in court. A backup voicemail Daniel had left her 2 days before his death, never previously shared. I know it's dangerous, but you were born for this, Daniel said on the recording. You're not just a witness, Jen. You're the wall they crash into. The room fell silent. Even the defense counsel, who had once mocked her resolve, sat unmoving. And then, just as the judge prepared to dismiss the day, Jennifer stood once more, not to speak, but to ask. I would like to submit a request. Not as a witness, as a mother. Permission was granted. She stepped forward, unfolding a letter, one she had written to her son but never delivered. She didn't read all of it, just the final lines. I told you monsters weren't real, that the world was fair. I was wrong. But what's true is this monsters can be defeated, even the ones wearing diamonds. A quiet murmur swept the room, not of shock, but of recognition, because by now the world had heard the tapes, seen the map, watched the fall, and in every corner of the internet, a single phrase had begun to spread: the ring doesn't lie. As the trial neared its conclusion, Judge Sullivan delivered a statement of her own. This court recognizes Ms. Lawrence's testimony as not only credible, but critical to the exposure of a multi-tiered system of coercion and surveillance. The courage displayed by the witness has in effect ignited one of the most comprehensive investigations into public-private corruption in modern American history. She turned to Jennifer. Ms. Lawrence, the court owes you no less than its respect and its continued protection. Jennifer nodded, not out of triumph, but acknowledgement. Because the truth had cost her. Daniel, her career, years of silence. But the system built to keep her quiet was no longer intact. It was exposed, cracked, and from those cracks others had begun to step forward. New witnesses, old files, former insiders with names, locations, passwords. The map had grown, and in the final minutes of the final hearing, the judge looked at the defense table, now vacant, except for legal proxies, and said the words the world waited for. This court finds cause to proceed with formal indictments, not just against the defendant, but against every confirmed participant. Jennifer exhaled. Finally. It wasn't justice yet, but it was beginning. As she walked out of the courthouse, press lights flashing and reporters shouting her name, she didn't speak. She didn't raise a hand or flash a smile. She just walked. And around her neck the silver ring glinted in the light. Not a trophy, not a threat, but a memory and a message. The system cannot hide when someone dares to speak. Not anymore.